For someone just starting off, I would recommend focusing on developing your skills more than having the most up-to-date equipment. I think Lego has a movie maker app that I think is free and you can just do stop motion from your iPhone. That would not be a bad starting point for someone who's just needing to get a feel for moving the figures and having them interact. That would probably be where I would start if I was just starting off now.
Be paranoid, Luke. It looks perfectly safe. Oh, come on! What you know about that? It was a trap.
The program that I use for doing my stop motion is called Dragon Frame. The main value that this program gives me is that it has a direct feed to my camera, so every time I take a frame, I can see that frame, and I can see it compared to the previous frames. I keep my gear pretty basic. I have a consumer level tripod that I spent 30 bucks on. I have a used Canon T2i that I bought from my dad for 500 bucks. I have Dragon Frame, which I use for capturing and importing my still images. And then I use Final Cut Pro 7, which I bought as a student for my editing. And then I borrow my day job's work computer for Adobe After Effects. And that basically covers the gamut of my gear. Most of my videos I use an ARRI light kit for the lighting. The two most useful lights have been the ARRI 150s, and then I will often use an ARRI 300 or an ARRI 650 for probably like the fill light. The only lens that I have is a standard 18-50 lens that I got with my Canon T2i. For the sound recording, I use a Zoom microphone recorder, and that honestly covers most of my needs. A lot of my sound effects, I have access to a sound effects library called Digital Juice, and I will download a lot of the sound effects from there. Other times I'll just search on the internet and see if I can find sound effects there. And there are other times where I will take out my little recorder and just record sound effects myself, especially for just the Foley of like people picking up or setting down coffee cups or walking. And the sort of thing that it's really easy to just go and record yourself, I will often do that. For a lot of my videos, rather than using a Lego platform as the surface, I try to have a more organic, more like natural sort of feel. And so I try to give like a dirt or muddy surface. And so you end up with this surface of just brown clay that looks kind of like mud that the characters stick in and they can walk around in. When I do have to use a Lego base plate, I will often have a little piece of clay behind the characters, and that piece of clay will help them balance and make movements. But yeah, the studs very often just get in the way and impede them from moving exactly like I want them to.
Puny stick.
There you are, Mr. Gandalf. No charge.
Thank you, Garrett.
Mr. Ollivander, who is that? Oh, that's Mr. Gandalf, Harry, the most powerful wizard in the world.
A lot of people like using blue screen or green screen to help build out their set and make it look a lot bigger. I avoid green screen or blue screen when possible and only bring it in when necessary. Unless you're really, really good at compositing, you can tell that the background isn't really there, and it robs your video of authenticity. There are times where you're after a really epic shot where you just don't have the space to build it out in reality. Use blue screen then, but use it as a tool, not as a norm. At my current YouTube videos, I shoot my animations in 24 frames per second, but it took me 10 years to get to that point. I would recommend for someone starting off, go with 12. 12 is basically the threshold by which things start to look smooth. They won't nearly look as smooth as 24, but it's a good training ground by which you can start to learn how to move your characters and start getting a feel and a sensibility for how to make a stop motion project work. One thing that might be a good practice for anyone who's wanting to really take this seriously is doing Lego recreations of live action things, where you'll have, like playing in QuickTime, you can count the frames. Okay, this is how many frames it takes for this character to move. Okay, this is how many frames I need to make my character move. And by trying to match and emulate things from real life, you'll very quickly develop the sensibilities of this is how many frames it takes for all these different motions. To get good at stop motion, it takes a lot of practice, and it's not just conceptual knowledge, some of it's literally just motor skills of being able to move things ever so slightly. There are a few things that you just need to have as personality traits. One, you have to be very detail-oriented. You have to be able to look at a shot and see, okay, there's 12 different characters, and I need to keep track of all 12 of them. And all of them will be doing something completely different. Like, we'll have a bunch of orcs sitting around a table, and this guy will be drinking out of a mug, and then this person will be like trying to cut something with his knife, and this one will just be looking around bored. And you have to be able to think about all 12 characters at the same time, and what all 12 of them are doing, and imbue all 12 of them with some degree of personality.
Don't fear, my lady. Legolas is here. Nothing to fear. You're safe now, my lady.
Thank you, Legolas. You're like the brother I've never had.
Another sensibility that it's really good to develop is the phrase good enough. You need to know when something is good enough and when it's not good enough, because there are two huge errors you can fall into. You can become a perfectionist, where nothing is good enough, and you keep trying the same shot over and over and over and over and over again. And if you spend all this time trying to get it perfect, you will never actually move on to shot number 2. And developing a sensibility for good enough will help keep you from being sloppy or being a perfectionist, neither of which will result in you getting the outcomes you want. The biggest things to keep in mind when just starting off with stop motion is no one sits down to a piano for the first time and plays a concerto. You need to practice. It's not something that you can instantly be good at. And it's not something where you could necessarily have someone teach you. Once you have the basic knowledge of how it works, from then on out it's basically trial and error. There are no quick and easy solutions to getting good at it. How do you get good at it? Day after day, hour after hour, frame by frame. And if you keep it up, every frame you do will potentially be better than the frame before. And eventually you'll get to the point where you're like, I have something that I'm proud of and is ready to show. So don't be discouraged if you don't start off at the level you want to be, because no one does. You just have to get to that level.